Hey everyone, welcome to Gastromania. I've received quite a bit of requests for vegetarian friendly options from a few of my viewers and friends, so I've decided to make a video on Mapo Tofu. Mapo Tofu is a very iconic Chinese dish that comes from Sichuan. It has the distinctive spicy and numbing flavor profile of Sichuan dishes. The original dish requires ground beef, but I cannot consume beef, therefore I will be using ground pork instead. If you're a vegetarian, you can just omit the meat added to this dish and everything will still taste mostly the same. Let's get right into this recipe. Let's start with the ingredients. You can pause the video for the list of ingredients before I go through each of them. First, we have the star of the show, tofu. You have to use non-silken type of tofu. Silken tofu is way too soft for stir frying and will 100% break before you even serve the dish. You don't want the dish looking like a sad mess of mushy tofu. Silken tofu is more for soups and dishes where there's not much frying involved, such as sundubu jjigae. Next, we have 150 grams of ground pork. This gives the dish another layer of flavor and texture. But it's not essential, so you can omit it if you do not consume meat. Next, we have the aromatics, minced garlic and ginger. I've got 1 tablespoon minced garlic, and for the ginger you only need around 20 grams or so, a small amount. 1 stalk of spring onions, mainly for garnishing purposes. 1 teaspoon Szechuan Peppercorns. These provide the numbing sensation that is iconic of Sichuan dishes. They may look harmless, but they will kick you right at the back of your throat. Next, for the seasoning, the essential spicy bean paste. This bean paste contains a very salty, umami and spicy flavor, and there is no ingredients that can substitute it in this dish. Lastly, we have about 200 grams of chicken stock. The original recipe requires beef stock, which I cannot consume, so I will be using chicken stock. If you are unable to consume meat, you can also use mushroom stock and it will taste as good. I've tried it. For the equipment, you will also need a pestle and mortar set to grind the peppercorns into powder. Let's begin the preparation by cutting up the tofu. First, remove it from the packaging by slicing along the lengths of the package. Pour out the liquid inside the package of tofu. Carefully peel off the plastic and press a plate with flat edges on the sides onto the tofu. Overturn the tofu and let it slide out onto the plate nicely. Slide the tofu off the plate and onto the chopping board. First, slide the knife directly across the middle of the tofu, splitting it into 2 layers. Then, cut the tofu into regular cuboids. Take delicate care while cutting the tofu. Let the weight of the knife sink through the tofu effortlessly, and then pull out the knife slowly. The cut tofu should all be of similar length and width, around 3 cm by 2 cm. Next, mince up the ginger. I've already gotten minced garlic from the supermarket, so it's not necessary to mince it. It's really convenient to be able to get such items these days. It will save you a lot of preparation time too. Next, spring onions. Remove the purple parts that are usually dirtier as they're in contact with the soil. Wash and remove the purple layer, exposing the whites of the spring onions. We also need to pluck off the wilting yellow tips of the spring onions to ensure that it looks presentable. Cut the spring onion into half. We will be using the spring onions for both presentation and cooking. Chop the lower parts very finely. These will go into the dish during the cooking process as it has much more intense flavor. For the top part, cut them into 3 to 4 cm strips. They will be used for garnish at the presentation stage. It is important that you cut them into roughly the same length so that the dish looks more aesthetic. After cutting up all the ingredients, toast the Szechuan peppercorns. It is essential to toast them to intensify the flavor within the peppercorns. You can add more if you are able to take spicy food. I would like to know if there are many people who are able to take numbing spice like me. Share with me if you're able to take this type of spiciness. The peppercorns are ready when you can see a little bit of oils forming on its surface and a little bit of smoke starts forming. Take out the peppercorns and grind it. Use big circular motions while exerting a bit of weight onto the peppercorns to make sure that they are finely ground. Once done, keep it in a small dish and set it aside for later use. Let's start with the cooking process. First, add 1 teaspoon of salt into lightly boiling water and add the tofu. When the tofu is added, the temperature drops and the water will stop boiling. We want to maintain the fire at around medium heat where the boiling is not vigorous, otherwise the tofu will shatter into pieces. We will boil the tofu for about 5 minutes. The purpose of the boiling step is to cook the tofu through, so that it firms up and is slightly harder than when it came in a package. After 5 minutes of boiling, keep the tofu inside the hot water and let it sit until it's time to add it to the sauce. In the meantime, heat up some vegetable oil. You can then add the minced garlic and ginger when it's not too hot and let the temperature slowly rise. This will prevent them from charring too fast and get out of your control. Stir fry until they get aromatic. Once they brown slightly, add the spicy bean paste. Stir fry the spicy bean paste until the aroma becomes strong. Once fragrant, add the minced pork. Seasoning the pork here is optional as the flavor of the sauce is very strong and the large surface area to volume ratio of the minced pork will allow it to absorb most of the sauce very quickly. If you want to make it more flavorful, you can season the pork with some cooking wine, soy sauce and sesame oil. Once the pork turns white, add the chicken stock and wait for it to boil. Mix the ground pork well and let it fully submerge under the stock. Once the stock boils, let it reduce until the water level is about the height of the minced pork. At this point, take out the tofu sitting in the hot water bath and add it into the pan. Mix the tofu evenly and make sure that each piece is coated with sauce evenly. Wait for the mixture to boil. Once the mixture starts boiling, add the finely chopped spring onions. Dust the dish with some Szechuan pepper depending on your spice tolerance. I ended up not adding all of them as my mom told me to put less. Mix in everything well. If you want to do some tossing, be sure to do it very lightly and just let the tofu on the edge move up to prevent excessive force on the delicate tofu. At this point, if your sauce is not thick enough, add some cornstarch slurry prepared beforehand. Once you add it to the sauce, mix the cornstarch well and the sauce will thicken up immediately. It's time to serve the dish. Garnish the Mapo Tofu with the spring onion strips prepared earlier. And Mapo Tofu is done. This dish really takes no effort and contains really common ingredients that you can get in most Asian supermarkets, even in Western countries. Top it off with rice and you have a really hearty home-cooked meal that will be sure to warm the cockles of your heart. Thank you for staying to the end of today's episode. If you liked my video, consider subscribing to my 2 videos I upload each week. Click on these videos to view more delicious recipes. And I will catch you next time.